Nathan and Jessica go through training. Saul starts the descent into the dark side, and a new ally is introduced. Hello, entertainment enthusiasts. This is Ray, and this is the Fandom Realm. Today I'm going to be reviewing episode number 2 and episode number 3 of The Bastard Son and the Devil Himself. As always, this is a spoiler review, so just be warned. So episode 1 ended with the Fairborn Council officials outside Nathan's house in order to take him into custody after he beat the crap out of Annalise's brother. The episode begins with them taking Nathan into custody. He does give himself up. So a great deal of this episode is actually going to be devoted to training both Nathan and Jessica. Basically what happens is they take Nathan back to the Fairborn Council, and he's told that he's going to be trained to take out his father. Nathan is sent with Ceelia to an isolated area in an isolated house where she's going to try to train him. However, it appears to be more abuse than actual training. He is forced to run more than is humanly possible, and then she locks him up in a cage overnight. Although it is abusive, Ceelia does seem to develop a like for him. He possibly earns some respect for taking everything that she is dishing out. He can't stop thinking about Annalise, though. He's fed up with being held a prisoner and essentially tortured under the guise of training. And, he's still in denial about being a blood witch as well. Only problem is, nobody else really seems to consider that possibility anyway. Jessica, on the other hand, is being trained in the Fairborn Council cadet program. She also receives some bullying from other cadets, seemingly because of Nathan and who his father is. Jessica is not one to back down, though, and she really is going to defend herself. At one point, she comes up against a cadet named Hazel, and Hazel is not being very nice to her. And so she turns herself into a naked version of Hazel, and then a naked version of Hazel's boyfriend, and then a naked version of Hazel's dad, and sort of puts Hazel in her place. She does end up opening up with a cadet named Kieran, and during their talk, we're really going to see her having a chip on her shoulder. Eventually, the hunters and cadets both are summoned to Wells in response to reports of blood witch activity, and potentially even Marcus. They're going to storm a house and find a bunch of beheaded corpses, a woman dying who's being suffocated by a curse. They find an attic full of blood and lots of severed body parts. And most all of that belongs to the first team that they had sent to investigate. Now we're going to skip ahead and see Annalise's giving ceremony. This is where she gets her 3 items and blood so she can get her power. Rutger and Sol quietly discuss the situation that was going on in Wells. We do become aware that the victims did still have their hearts, so it doesn't seem like Marcus was actually there. And all of this has Sol visibly shaken. Apparently, he and another Fairborn council member had carried out the attack that has Marcus so angry and looking for vengeance. And it becomes pretty obvious that the Fairborn witches are hiding something about this conflict with Marcus. While Annalise initially can't figure out what her power will be, she is going to figure things out, or at least start to, when she's traveling with David. They have been out bowling, and she gets angry, and she snaps at him and yells, and something happens to him. We don't really know exactly what, but he is injured, and he crashes the car, and both he and Annalise get sent to the hospital because of injuries. Now, eventually the hunters are going to track the blood witches to a cornfield where they're going to move in teams through all the fields. But it seems to me to be a setup for them. There's lots of confusion. Some of it may be deliberate on both sides, and fighting's going to ensue. And with this fighting, of course, is a lot of death. At one point, Jessica is going to come upon a blood witch sucking the life force out of Hazel. Well, Jessica doesn't like Hazel, so Jessica lets the blood witch kill her. And then after Hazel's out of it, Jessica shoots the blood witch. When all this is reported back to Soul, he does worry that Jessica may be behind Hazel's death. We also find that Rutger is dead, and they had done a magical reenactment in the previous episodes, and this entire scene was very similar to that. So what they start thinking is that maybe what had gone down in Wells was a diversion to make Rutger more vulnerable. They're then going to come to the realization that Marcus just might know about the prophecy and consider Nathan a threat. So they're actually going to send more hunters off to help protect Nathan. We're also going to learn from Ceelia, as she's having a flashback, that she actually witnessed the Wolfhagen Peace Massacre as a child. Because of her, we're going to learn how powerful Marcus is. He can take others' abilities. That is what his power is. And he's already accumulated many powers, including he can control the elements like the weather. He has extremely fast healing. He has great knowledge of brewing potions and all kinds of other little fun tricks. This also shows us why she is sort of unhappy with Nathan, because his father killed her parents. But it is pretty obvious that she is beginning to care at least a little for Nathan. The episode is going to end with Soul apparently killing his brother after he has a discussion about a leather-bound spellbook. They weren't allowed to see this spellbook as kids, and their father would punish them for it. Soul actually kept the spellbook, and he intends to use it against Marcus. But he does need a vial of Rowan's blood, and he is going to... The episode ends with Soul apparently killing his brother Rowan after discussing a leather-bound spellbook they weren't allowed to look at as kids. Soul kept it, and he intends to use it against Marcus, but needs a vial of Rowan's blood. He's also going to use this blood to draw Marcus's X symbol on the greenhouse. Now we're going to move on into episode number 3. And we're going to have lots of bad news to start this episode because, of course, both Rowan and Nathan's Gran have passed away, both because of Soul. Soul, though, is blaming Marcus. He's going to show up to pick up Nathan. He has decided he wants to use Nathan right now against Marcus instead of waiting for him to finish his training. The only problem for Soul is, as he's returning with Nathan, Marcus ambushes the convoy they are in the form of an eagle, which, by the way, Ceelia had seen that same eagle in the previous episode. Marcus kills everyone except Nathan, Jessica, and Soul. The three manage to escape back to London, where Soul sedates Nathan, ties him to a bed, and tattoos some magical symbols on his chest and finger using a needle and Rowan's blood. We find out that the spell is called a witch's bottle, which is extremely dark magic, and it's totally forbidden. When Soul leaves the room, Nathan is able to free himself and escapes. While escaping, he is cornered by a security guard, but he's going to be saved by Annalise. She's going to show up, and she's going to surprisingly use her power to save him. We're going to see everything big that she has witnessed up to this point. They sort of do one of these situations where they go back for part of the episode and follow her point of view up to the situation she comes to the guard and Nathan. And so we get to see, basically, during this time, we get to see everything she has witnessed up to this point, including when her pet rat bit her and she first used her decimation power and destroyed the rat. We also get to see the car accident again from a little different perspective, but that was another time that she used her power, and she actually had to do research to find out that the power was called decimation. Basically, it tears people or things into as many pieces as possible. And actually, the book she was looking at, there was an illustration in it, and It's exactly what happened to the security guard. When they call it decimation, it is decimation. It is basically breaking you down to all your component parts. You can see the muscles, you could see the fat, you could see the skeleton all come apart. It was really, I thought, a cool special effect. After the guard is decimated, Nathan and Annalise flee from Jessica. After catching up on what had been going on, they do decide to ask the map Mercury had drawn on Nathan's hand for help, and it starts to guide them somewhere else. The map leads them to a door that was hidden behind a wall, and it leads them into an apartment. And there in the apartment is a new, very important character, Gabriel. Gabriel basically is an easygoing stoner. He works for Mercury. We're not originally told how that is. That's probably going to be coming. We find out Nathan is getting closer to his 17th birthday, and he needs to get his family's blood before Giving Day. Now that his gran has been killed by Sol, that could be a problem. But Gabriel tells Nathan that Mercury keeps samples of blood from all witches' families. So she should have blood that he can use for the ceremony. Gabriel also tells them that Mercury may be able to change Annalise's power, since she is so scared to use it after she decimated the guard. Now, as they do come in, Nathan and Annalise basically are covered in blood, and they're going to head to the bathroom to strip off so that they can clean their clothes. They're going to be very close to hooking up until Gabriel interrupts them. Now, the episode is going to end when Sol and some of the council guards find Gabriel's apartment in search for Nathan. But Nathan, Gabriel, and Annalise are going to escape by jumping out the window while they were biting down on a magical orb. It basically opens a magical gate, sort of like a portkey in Harry Potter, I think. Gabriel only had 2 orbs, but Annalise manages to go along as well. Although Gabriel actually tried to leave her behind. He didn't want to have anything to do with her because he did find out she was Sol's daughter. So obviously there's something going on between Sol and Gabriel, or they know each other somehow. In the end, it seems like the portal they jumped into was going to head them off to Paris to find Mercury. And thus, episode 3 draws to a close. All right, now for some thoughts and reactions before we get to a grade for these 2 episodes combined. And first off, I'm just going to point out, I really like how this is being constructed, how this story is being constructed through 3 episodes. It's very obvious, I think, in the writing that as we're seeing Nathan's growth and how good he potentially is, and that although he's a blood witch, he is really quite a good person, and he's more on the light side. We're also seeing the Fairborn Council and people, especially Sol, they're devolving into evil. So you have a situation where the people who are supposed to be bad actually are pretty good, and the people who are good are devolving into being bad because they feel like the ends justifies the means, or at least Sol does. And so with that, it is very interesting, and I enjoy a storyline like that, and it really has me hooked on this show. Now, I'm just going to tell you, last thing here on positives, and that is the magic. I get really mad when fantasy shows that use magic, when they won't use magic. I just got through with reactions, 2 weeks ago on Vampire Academy, and that show just made no sense, or parts of it made no sense to me, because you had these vampires that had all kinds of power, but they would not use it to even defend themselves. Well, we get to see plenty of magic in this story. And I think we're going to be seeing even more, of course. And I enjoy that. I want a story about witches to show magic. I was also very touched in this show that although it's very obvious that Ceelia doesn't really like Nathan that much, of course, Marcus killed her parents, so she has that grudge. But by the end of the training, when Sol comes to get him, there is some admiration there, I think, because she has literally abused this kid for what we're going to decide is probably months. And he just keeps taking it, and he just keeps coming back. He keeps running. He keeps getting locked in the cage. And I think there's some admiration for that by the end of that whole process. And so I really enjoyed that. I mean, she's known him since he was a little boy. She basically, once he became a certain age, she saw him once a month for his entire life, testing him about being a blood witch. Another thing I really like is this whole relationship with Jessica and the fact that, again, she doesn't like Nathan because of what everybody thinks about them because of Marcus, but she's sort of turning into somebody like Marcus. And I like that they're doing that in this show as well. We do have some nice action. I really enjoy that. It's not action bound, so there's not too much going on with that, but it's enough to keep us interested. The next thing is just that I really liked, that stood out to me, is this power that Annalise has. Decimation is crazy. It looks awesome on screen, and I'm wondering, for book readers out there, if you're a book reader and you read about decimation, I'm going to assume she has the same power in the books. Did you think that's what it was going to look like? Because I thought the effect was awesome. And so this was something that, I thought was new. I don't think we've really ever seen anything like that for a power in any kind of fantasy show. So, like I also said, of course, it's becoming obvious the path our characters are going to take. Saul, by killing his brother, it's pretty obvious he's going to become a bad guy. Nathan's probably going to continue to be a good guy. And you may have these two ending up in conflict at the end. Now, the last little thing I'm going to make a good comment about is the addition of Gabriel and the chemistry between characters. To me, it sort of goes together. Now, I'm going to be honest, a lot of these characters, I don't think they really have great chemistry together. I think Annalise and Nathan have good chemistry, but I also think once they introduced Gabriel, there seemed to be almost immediately some chemistry between Nathan and Gabriel. And especially, even still between all of them. Of course, one of the first scenes we see with Gabriel, Nathan and Annalise are making out, and he ends up interrupting them. And so there's this good bit of chemistry between them. Now, let's quickly talk about negatives for these two episodes. I didn't really pick out a ton of negatives here. Some of these are sort of nitpicky. One thing that I'm not completely happy with is it seems like they've introduced a lot of characters. They've introduced a lot of things in 3 episodes, and keeping straight everybody's relationship is a little tedious at times. Also, along with that, a lot of these people aren't hashed out enough for us to know what's going on. Like for Neil, that's Annalise's brother. Did Nathan end up actually killing him? We don't know the answer to that, at least not yet through episode 3, or at least that I haven't seen. And so I think there are little things like that, especially with having these characters that are added in that we might not be able to see. Now, last little negative, and that is, while I like the chemistry between Nathan, Annalise, and now Gabriel, I'm not liking chemistry between other characters. The only other 2 characters I really care about right now are Saul and Jessica, and they're pretty evil. But even at that, I don't get that chemistry between them. I'm not sure what's really going on there. Now, with all that being said, I'm going to go through and give a grade here, and I think I'm going to give both episodes together a good solid B. I enjoyed it overall. It really was a pickup, I think, from episode 1. Episode 1 was a little bit slow, and I really like the way they're building this world. Now, with that, I hope you enjoyed my review here today. Please sub to the channel, like the video, and comment below. And I'll see you next time on the Fandom Realm.